I had not seen my ex-husband's brother in years when he showed up at my door. I thought it would be a simple, polite visit, but the way he looked at me, so familiar, so different, sent a shiver through me. I tried to endure the tension. But something had changed, and by the time the evening ended, I realized this was not just a visit. It was the beginning of something I never saw. Coming, it had been 6 years since the divorce, a lifetime ago. And yet sometimes it still felt like yesterday. The hurt had dulled, like an old scar. But it was still there, a quiet reminder every time. I saw couples on park benches or heard laughter from behind closed windows. I'd not expected to be alone in my 40s. But here I was building a life from the pieces he had left behind. That Friday morning began like any other. I just poured my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. I was not expecting anyone, and for a moment, I thought it was a delivery I had forgotten about. But when I opened the door, I froze there. He stood, David Mex, husband's younger brother. He looked older, more defined, his once boyish charm now shaped into something steadier, deeper. His smile was hesitant as though he did not know if he should have come high. "Claire," he said, his voice low and soft like it had been rehearsed. "David," I replied, caught somewhere between surprise and confusion. "What are you doing here?" He scratched the back of his neck, a nervous habit he had kept since college. "I was in town," I thought. I hoped I could see you just to talk." Part of me wanted to say no, part of me wanted to shut the door gently. Andre turned to the quiet routine of my day. But the loneliness had carved its way deep, and I had not spoken to anyone all week. Outside of work, emails come in. He say, finally stepping aside. He walked in slowly, like he was entering a church or a memory. The house had changed since he last visited. I had painted the walls, changed the furniture, tried to erase the shadows of the past. But he looked around with a kind of quiet familiarity, as if the bones of the place still whispered the story he remembered. We sat in the living room and I offered him coffee, Hemmold nodding. "Still make it with too much cream and cinnamon?" I laughed despite myself. "Some things do not change, some do me." He said quietly. There was a pause that stretched just a little too long. I felt my heart beating. Not out of attraction, not yet, but something was shifting, the kind of tension that lingers when the past walks into your present. "I heard about you and Mark," he finally said, referring to his brother. I never got to say I am sorry, looked down at my mug. It was a long time coming. I always thought he was a fool-headed, but I never said anything. I thought maybe that was not my place. It was not, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. There had been a time I had wished anyone had spoken up, would talked about meaningless things, about memories, about the time he and Mark had gotten drunk and locked themselves out of the house, about how he used to borrow my books and return them with notes, scribbled in them, Arjun's. It was strange how easy it felt, like a warm coat pulled from the back of the closet, still fitting after all these years. Then Hest, "Are you seeing anyone?" I paused, caught off guard by the question. "No, I've not really. I have not wanted to." He nodded. "Me neither." The silence that followed was different. It was not awkward. It was heavy charged, like something had been spoken, even if the words had not been said. He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes searched my face, and I felt suddenly aware of myself. The lines that had deepened over the years, the softness in my frame, the way my sweater clung to my figure. I wasn't 25 anymore, but I was not ashamed of. "That you look good, Claire," he said, softly. "Really, good?" I swallowed, feeling a blush creep up my neck. I had not heard those words in a long time. "You do not have to say that I want to." There was something in his voice, something steady and honest. And in that moment I remembered who he had been to me once. Not just Mark's brother. He had been Theon I had talked to during family gatherings. The one who had always made him laugh, The one who had always seen me really seen me. I do not know why I came. Here today, he admitted, standing up slowly. Maybe just to see, if I do not know if the past could mean something. Again, I stood too unsure of what to say. The air between us was thick with emotion unspoken and undefined. David, this is complicated. No, I just missed you. I looked into his eyes, and in them I did not see Mark's brother. I saw a man who had always been quietly in the background, waiting for Amamen to be more, and something in me whispered maybe this time he should be. I still remember the moment when he stepped closer. The dim kitchen light cast a golden hue on his face, as if the universe had paused time to highlight. What was about to unfold, I was standing against the counter, clutching a warm mug of chamomile tea that had long since gone cold. His eyes were on mine, unflinching, deliberate, deep, with something unspoken, and for the first time in years I felt seen. I never meant to cause problems. He whispered, his voice husky. But I cannot pretend anymore. I've been holding this in 4 years. And being near you again, it is unbearable. My breath caught. I was not a stranger to affection, but the honesty in his voice, raw and trembling, cut deeper than any rehearsed declaration ever had I opened my mouth to respond. But nothing came out. I watched you all those years, he continued. You were the one who kept the family together. You were the one who laughed at everyone's jokes and cried alone. At night I saw everything, and I never said a word. And then he, my brother, he let you go. He took another step forward. I could smell the scent of his aftershave, woody, clean, masculine, familiar, and yet forbidden. You should not say these things. I whispered, my voice thin almost. Afraid you are his brother. He smiled, gently, and he was my brother. Long before he became your husband. But he never deserved you, as still does not. His words, both unsettled and soothed me. Part of me felt guilty for even listening. But another part, dormant and yearning, welcomed the confession. The emotional drought I had lived through for years suddenly felt unjust. Do you remember the night you made that pumpkin soup? He asked, his voice now tender and nostalgic. Thanksgiving, he had gone outside to take a call. You and I were in the kitchen. You burned your hand on the pot. I nodded slowly. The memory surprisingly vivid. I wanted to hold your hand. Then he said, just to soothe it. But you looked at me like you were trying so hard to be strong. I saw it all then, and I hated myself for not saying something. My heart thudded louder. That memory was buried deep, but not forgotten back then. I thought I imagined the energy between us. I thought I was just lonely reading, too much into kindness, but now hearing him speak it aloud, it validated every feeling I had suppressed. I looked down, needing to ground myself. You're talking about years ago. Michael, a lot had changed. He reached out, gently, and touched my wrist, just a brush of his fingertips. And yet it was like a fire started beneath my skin. You still make tea when you are nervous? He said. You still run your fingers along the countertop when you are thinking. And you still close your eyes when you need to stop yourself from crying. I looked up at him. His eyes were no longer just deep. They were searching, hopeful. You remember too much, I said, softly. No, I remember what mattered. We stood there for a long moment, the space between us buzzing with the weight of unspoken feelings and the fear of crossing a line that once crossed could never be uncrossed. I don't know what you want from me, I said, finally, voice shaking. I do not want anything you cannot give, he said, but I need you to know that someone saw you, someone appreciated the way you carried that home, the way you kept smiling even when you were breaking. You deserve to be loved, right? I do not know if I can be that person, but I want the chance. I turned away, my hands gripping the edge of the counter, tears spoiled in my eyes, but I did not let them fall. I had cried too many times for too many wrong reasons. This moment, whatever it was, deserved clarity. He stepped behind me, but did not touch me. You are scared. He said, I am confused. I replied, I will not push you. Just do not shut me out. I turned around to face him again. His proximity was overwhelming but not threatening. There was something patient about the way he waited, almost as if he knew I needed to. Find the answer myself. I have spent so many years building walls, I whispered, and now you're asking me to take one down. No, he said, I am just asking to be allowed to. Stand outside the wall, maybe. One day you will let me in. Something in me broke then. But not in a painful way. It was like a release. A breath I had held in for too long. I nodded one day. Said smiled and leaned down. Not to kiss me, but to rest his forehead against mine. It was intimate, in a way that was more powerful than a kiss. It was grounding. Thank you, he said. And just like that, the moment passed, but the air between us had shifted forever. Later that evening, as he stood by the door ready to leave, I handed him his coat. Our fingers brushed. This time I did not pull mine away. Dinner tomorrow? He asked. I hesitated, then smiled. Dinner sounds good. He nodded and walked out into the night. Leaving behind a silence that Fell knew it was not empty. It was full of possibility. And for the first time in every long time I did not feel alone. That night I could not sleep. Michael's words looped in my mind. Like a song I could not turn off. The way he looked at me. The honesty, the intensity had shaken something deep inside me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart restless. It was not just about him. It was about me. About how long I had been starved of connection, how long I had lived, pretending I was fine. I had spent years, holding myself together for others, forming children for appearances, for pride, and never allowed myself to grieve. The years I lost the affection, I never received the woman I stopped being somewhere. Along the way, I had buried that version of myself beneath duty and pain, and now with just one visit, one conversation, Michael had unearthed her. The next morning, I stood at the kitchen, sink washing a mug that did not need washing, just for something to do. I looked out the window and saw the sunlight warming the backyard. The same yard I used to tend with love when life felt lighter. I remembered the first time I met Michael young, wild and full of laughter back then. He was just my boyfriend's brother. He had teased me, made me laugh, always respectful but never distant. And then life happened. Roles were assigned, lines were drawn, and I forgot the way he made me feel now. He sat at the kitchen table and thought about my ex-husband. We had built a life together, yes, but love, real, tender, patient. Love I did not think Eve truly had that with him. And worse, I'd convinced myself I did not need it. That marriage was not about desire or understanding. It was about survival. But Michael's presence had reminded me of everything. I had denied myself for too long gentle words, real attention, the luxury of being seen without judgment. So I felt guilty. Guilty because of the past, because of family, because of the woman I was raised to be. Was it wrong to let these feelings live even? In silence that evening, I cooked a simple dinner, roasted vegetables and lemon chicken. I told myself it was not for him, that I just wanted a warm meal. But I knew, better, there was a flicker of anticipation in my chest. I had not felt in years. When Michael arrived, he brought a bottle of wine and that same warm smile. But there was a quiet between us, now different from the day before. A space filled with questions. Neither of us knew how to ask over dinner. We talked about music, about childhood memories, about the places we wanted to visit. Someday, I laughed, really laughed, until my cheeks hurt, and he watched me like he'd been waiting to hear that sound for years. Then the conversation slowed, and the silence came back this time. Not awkward, just full. No, this is complicated, he said finally, his fingers tracing theorem of his wine glass. Yes, I replied. It is, but I need you to know something, he said, voice steady, but soft. Even if nothing ever happens between us, even if this stays just a moment in time, I'm grateful for yet you reminded me what it feels like to really care about someone. His words hit me like A wave not because they were poetic, but because they were real, and you reminded me that I am still a woman. I whispered, not looking at him, not just a mother, not just someone's ex I had almost forgotten. He reached across that edible and gently took my hand. His touch was warm, his grip secure but not possessive. I did not pull away. There is no pressure, he said. You do not owe me anything. I hope you stop hiding from yourself. That line stayed with me later that night. As I stood by the mirror brushing my hair, I looked at my reflection differently. I did not search for flaws like I usually did. Instead, I saw a woman who had survived heartbreak, who had raised children, who had given everything and asked for very little. I saw strength, but I also saw softness, a softness I had buried to survive. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to wonder, what if I deserved more? What if this was not betrayal, but healing a lay-in? Bed that night, not running from the storm-off feelings, but letting them move through. Me, Michael's presence had stirred. Something I could no longer endure. Not just attraction, but validation that I was still worth being noticed. Still worth being loved, and slowly the guilt began to fade. Not because the situation was simple, but because the truth was louder now than my fear I was not doing something wrong. I was waking up the next morning, sunlight streamed through my window, soft and warm like something inside. Me had shifted for good. I stood in the kitchen again, but this time I was not lost in thought. I was calm, so Michael came in quietly. Holding 2 mugs of coffee, I was not sure how you take it, he said, offering. And I smiled and accepted it to our fingers. Brushing briefly, there was no need to rush anything. We both felt that I should probably go back today, he said, gently, not asking, just stating audited. There was no expectation, no promises, but there was something even more powerful, understanding. As we stood in the quiet of the morning, I realized something. This story was not about forbidden feelings or dramatic consequences. It was about rediscovery, about remembering who I was before life got heavy, about learning that being seen, truly seen, could be the first step to healing. When Michael hugged me goodbye, it was not with urgency, but with warmth. Take care of yourself, he said. And I knew he meant it. As the door closed behind him, I did not feel abandoned. I felt awakened. I was no longer just someone's sex wife or someone's mother. I was a woman who had found a spark again, and no matter what happened next, I knew this would never let myself dim. Again, sometimes the most unexpected visit is not from someone else. It is from the part of you that you thought was gone.